Hi, thank you for joining us at CSO Connected today, where we're sitting in the beautiful Salesforce Tower for an interview with Jim Preston, Vice President of Sales for EMEA for Showpad. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you very much.
It's wonderful to have you here today. I'm looking forward to discussing the current and future state of sales enablement. You're certainly well equipped to have this conversation. You've been in technology for 15 years.
About that, yeah.
Yeah. You spent time with Salesforce, I know, and now, of course, you've been at Showpad for about a year and a half.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself. What gets you sort of up in the morning and excited to go out and take on the day?
What gets me up in the morning is my three little boys. I've got 3 boys below 8. They're pretty noisy, so that's my alarm clock, a nice way to start the day. But what gets me out of bed and up facing the day, I've always kind of enjoyed solving people's problems and challenges. I think that's how I found my way into sales. I like to listen and think, how can I help? And so each day getting up and going to work, I'm thinking, who am I going to face today? What kind of conversations are we going to have? And how can I kind of help them or my team help them solve their challenges? So that's kind of what I do. And that's how I kind of benchmark and monitor if I had a good day, a bad day, a good month, a bad month. Yeah. A little bit about me.
I think that's really wonderful, and you are in the right profession for sure for doing that, particularly in technology. Because I think that's all it's about, isn't it? These tools that help hopefully solve our customers' problems and the challenges they face.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're going to talk about sales enablement, and I think it probably means a lot of things to a lot of different organizations. It gets defined in a variety of ways. So for the purpose of our conversation today, how do you define sales enablement?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's many definitions out there. You asked 100 people, you probably get 100 different answers. We use language at Salesforce along the lines of sales enablement. Sales enablement is a strategic process that enables your sales organization and equips them with the right behaviors, the right tools, the right resources and skills to maximize every engagement with buyers. And these are buyers that now expect automation, innovation, and personalization more than ever before. It's quite a wordy way of talking about what sales enablement is. The way I kind of shorten that and think of it is sales enablement will help you prepare your sellers, engage your buyers, and then have the ability to optimize through analytics and insight.
Yeah, I'm excited that it's really getting the traction I think that it deserves, because it's been a long time, hasn't it, where we sort of bring salespeople in and give them a bit of training and then kind of hope that they get on with it and make magic with our customers. But normally that journey for the customer through our internal processes can be quite arduous, and for the salesperson to manage it becomes a distraction from their day job. So wonderful that we're getting more insight and tools. But how do you distinguish that from sales operations? Because for me, I know sometimes I think of them either the same or as one, the more broad umbrella. How would you define that?
In the experience that I've got, sales operations to me are normally responsible or are responsible for the technology, putting in place the infrastructure, the tools to enable the sales to then be accountable. It's a word that I like in sales, accountable, to actually then go out and use those tools and to go and be successful in terms of generating revenue. The sales enablement kind of program within companies tends in my mind to be a lot larger than that. There's a lot of stakeholders involved. It involves learning and coaching, it involves training, it involves the content, and also a technology, but also their strategy in there as well. And so I think that sales operations play a key part, but I think that sales enablement it's bigger and it's an ever maturing market and kind of program that we're seeing.
Yeah, and you talked a bit there about stakeholders. I know that in the buying process, we're seeing that there are an ever-growing number of stakeholders on the customer side to make a decision, because things are integrated and they go across operational areas. How has sales enablement changed in the last couple of years, and what are maybe some of those exciting things? It's a slightly leading question because I know AI is a big part of where sales enablement is going, but maybe can you talk a little bit about the recent journey that sales enablement has been on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you talk about the stakeholders. We know that there's 6 to 7 on average stakeholders involved now in any kind of buying decision. Within sales enablement, there tends to be a couple of key personas that we see. Sales and marketing are the main two. Then we see sales operations, or we see somebody with sales enablement in their title in the companies that have gone and hired someone to own this. The difference has been, I think you mentioned it earlier around kind of, or I did, and then you mentioned it back, was around data and insight. I think that's pivotal in the sense where before we were kind of guessing what was right and what was wrong, and it was word of mouth, it was tribal knowledge. But I think now with technology, we're able through machine learning and AI to actually understand what is working, what is resonating, and then from that be able to modify, revamp, and then go back and try and just make things a little bit better and sharper. And that's really exciting to see, because in my days from being a sales rep many years ago, we didn't have that insight. So a little bit of kind of shooting in the dark. And I think that just gives us the next level in terms of being able to go out and deliver against those buyer expectations.
Yeah, I think it is nice to be able to get something that is more concrete. I know the gut feel is always such a big thing.
Yeah, that's what I sold on.
Marketing and sales, right? I just have a feeling, and now it's actually whenever you hear a rep say that, you're kind of like, really? That might just be your lunch.
Yeah.
We can look at the facts. We can look at what's happened in the past and certainly make better predictions about what we expect will happen going forward, which is encouraging.
Yeah.
I think this is probably an obvious answer, but it bears articulating. So why is sales enablement so important? What is the impact that it has when you're doing it well?
Yep, and this is one of my favourite questions. I like numbers. I'm a VP sales, of course. I need to know my numbers, but there's some statistics out there from you guys, from sort of Serious Decisions, Miller Hyman, from Salesforce, all about sales performance. And over the last 5 years, according to Serious Decisions, sales performance has declined year on year in terms of number of reps actually hitting their number. I think in 2018, 48% of sales reps missed their number. Salesforce did some research beginning of 2019. They talked to a lot of salespeople and said, will you hit your number in the year ahead? And 57% said no. This is the beginning of the year. They didn't expect to hit their number. And then when you look at the reason why, there's always one main reason why. The last 7 years, the main reason that sales reps haven't been hitting their number is because of the inability to articulate the unique business value that the product or service will actually bring that customer. So this hasn't been something new. This has been around for a number of years, and yet we appear to be struggling to get our heads around the fact that the buyer is being a little bit underwhelmed. We're not able to say our products or services will help you in this way. And that to me is huge. I mean, and sales enablement is there to address that gap. It's saying the world has changed. When I was selling back in the early 1990s, first going out selling, if a customer wanted to know about my company, my product, my service, they kind of had to see me. I had to walk in and I was walking, talking brochure. I would go in and tell them what they needed to know. Now the customer has that at their fingertips. And so we need to go in now and talk about how we're going to help them solve their business challenges. And a couple more statistics for you. The reason this is so important, and this one comes again from you, companies that are invested in sales enablement actually see win rates 15% higher than companies that don't invest in sales enablement. And secondly to that, customers themselves, according to Serious Decisions, 82% of B2B buyers have said that they've made a purchase decision based upon the buying experience above and beyond the product and the price. So how many companies wouldn't want those kind of business wins where, they can improve that buyer experience and see 15% better win rates through having a sales enablement program that helps them meet the buyer on that needs and expectations basis?
I think it's a fabulous statistic because we focus so much on customer experience and NPS, which of course remains very important, but that is not just post-sale, it's post-implementation, how they're experiencing us once they have our products and services and their solutions and answers have hopefully taken place. But knowing that they're weighting the decision to purchase in the first place on how they're interacting with us is really meaningful, and I think certainly a great reason to make a significant investment in sales enablement. We were talking earlier and we agreed as well that it's about getting that sheet of music to make sure everyone's singing from the same page. And when you don't have things joined up from a sales enablement perspective, you risk your brand, your products, your services being described and given out to customers in a variety of ways, which is not helpful for anybody really. So
no, and it's very often comes up in the conversation we're having with customers and prospects very early on about if we were to ask our sales team or our marketing team, how do we ... How do we present this product? How do we talk about our services? If we ask 100 people, we're going to get 100 different answers, and that just can't happen. And when you've got industries that are heavily regulated and there's lots of compliance, you can't afford to have that either. So the consequences are massive, and therefore having that framework, having that consistency, it's now just part of every company's DNA that they need to have that.
Yeah. So on a quite a practical level, how can sales enablement help sales engage with customers in more meaningful ways? What are the sorts of tools within that sales enablement kit that are going to make them better salespeople, provide that right level of challenge or insight that sales enablement can empower them with?
Yeah, it's a multitude of things, and it's a really great question, and I think it varies wildly from what I've seen across our customer base, depending on the industry, depending on the owner, depends on maybe the businesses they're selling into. But in general, I think it all starts with kind of training, coaching, and learning. We talk a lot about content and we talk about knowledge, but if you haven't got that skill to deliver that, then everything else kind of falls apart. So we believe that any kind of sales enablement program or function should originally start with some sort of ongoing micro-learning, coaching, and development. And then you want to equip and enable your salespeople to actually have value-led and solution-led conversations with the customer. We, again, back to when I was a sales rep, it was all very transactional. I would come and sell you a certain product. It was kind of like pilot high and try and sell it cheap mentality. But now you've got to be able to have a consultative conversation with your buyer. Are they looking at acquisition, or are they looking at kind of reducing costs? They're two different conversations. And again, we talked about the amount of stakeholders involved in an average B2B buying decision at the moment. Each of those is a different persona, and they expect to be sold to in a different way, talking their language. We need to equip our sales team with that, and that's about being able to find that content, that story in the right way, in the right time, in an engaging way. And it sounds simple, but it's very hard to get right. And once you get it right, the business wins are huge.